The Macabre History of the Candle Sisters, They Burned Together. Part 1. The Wax Children. Long before the tragedy that would stain the name Candle blacker than pitch, the sisters were merely girls, Agatha and Isolde, born one squalling hour apart in the winter of 1823. Their mother, Marguerite Candle, labored through the longest night of the year, the birthing chamber lit by a ring of beeswax tapers that seemed to burn with an unnatural steadiness. They were pretty, those babies, with pale hair and skin the hue of raw wax, and Marguerite, herself a woman whispered to see beyond the veil, named them for saintly martyrs. Some said it was an ill choice, naming infants after women who died in fire and blood. But Marguerite Candle cared little for the judgment of Greymeyer's fishwives and church elders. The Candle home, a two-story timber house half sunk into the marsh's edge, smelled of tallow and herbs. Marguerite kept a workshop where she molded candles of curious shapes, wax dolls with runes carved into their bellies, tapers of a deep crimson hue said to burn forever if properly anointed, and tiny effigies used to heal, or to harm. From the moment they could walk, Agatha and Isolde wandered that workshop. They learned to dip wicks, to pour molten wax without spilling a drop, to mix oils that scented the candles so that they carried prayers, or curses, on the smoke. Even as children, they moved in eerie synchronicity, as if each breath and blink was choreographed by something unseen. Their mother warned them, "Never light a candle you've not blessed, my loves." Fire answers to faith and fury alike. But curiosity is stronger than caution, and the Candle sisters burned many unblessed tapers before the age of 10, delighting in the way shadows danced on the walls. The neighbors in Greymeyer watched them grow with wary fascination. The girls seemed to speak without words, eyes flicking in silent conversation. If Agatha bruised her knee, Isolde limped; if Isolde pricked her finger, Agatha wept. They were never apart, not even in sleep. Their beds were pushed together so that their hair tangled on the shared pillow each dawn. The townsfolk began to call them, half in jest, the Wax Children, soft, pliant, easily melted into new shapes. And perhaps that is what they became. Part 2. The Sisters' Craft. By 15, the Candle sisters had mastered their mother's trade, and exceeded it. Marguerite's customers came seeking charms for fertility, fortune, or vengeance, but the sisters added something new to the craft: artistry. Their candles were sculpted with uncanny precision. Lovers entwined, infants in swaddling, hunters and hares. Each figure seemed almost alive. Agatha shaped wax with a delicate touch, her hands steady even in the deepest cold. Isolde etched symbols so fine they could scarcely be seen by candlelight, yet they burned themselves into the heart of the candle's magic. Together, they were unstoppable. Folk came from beyond Greymeyer to buy their wares. A merchant's wife who could not bear children was blessed with twins after burning a Candle sister's taper each night for a moon's cycle. A farmer whose rival's cattle thrived bought an effigy, and soon the rival's fields were black with blight. But each gift carried a cost. Sometimes the sisters warned their clients, sometimes they did not. Those who failed to offer thanks, or payment, found the blessings twisted to curses. The twins claimed innocence, but the townsfolk whispered that they could hear laughter drifting from the sisters' workshop at night, laughter that sounded like crackling flames. By 20, they were both lovely in a ghostly way, tall, willow-slender, with pale eyes that caught firelight like polished glass. Suitors came, but none stayed. The bond between the sisters was unbreakable, and woe betide the man who tried to separate them. One brave youth, Elijah Fallow, dared to court Agatha. For a time, it seemed she returned his affection, until he suggested they might move away together. The next morning, Elijah was found by the marsh's edge, staring blankly into the reeds. He lived, but never spoke again, and his eyes were like dull wax, empty of light. No one tried to court either sister after that. Part 3. The Night of the Wax Heart. The Candle house grew darker as the years passed. Marguerite, grown frail and half-mad, kept to her bedchamber, muttering to shadows. Agatha and Isolde ran the workshop alone. It was on a rain-slicked October night in 1847 that Eliza Crewe, desperate and near her time with child, came knocking. She had been seduced by Jonathan Pike, a blacksmith's son, who had since turned cold. The child in her belly was proof enough of her ruin, and so she begged the sisters, "Bind him to me. Let him love me, even if it be by force." The sisters studied Eliza. Agatha's gaze was pitying, Isolde's, something colder. Finally, they agreed. They molded a heart of crimson wax, its surface etched with runes older than the church. Into the molten wax they whispered, each syllable as sharp as a knife. The heart smelled faintly of iron and roses when it cooled. That night, they lit the wick atop the wax heart. The sisters stood hand in hand, chanting in a tongue no living priest could name. Eliza watched, pale and trembling. The flame burned low at first. Then it flared, an orange tongue that seemed almost alive. It danced, twisted, and then spat sparks. The sisters did not stop chanting. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. Inside, the air grew suffocating, as though the flame itself were breathing. Suddenly, the wax heart cracked. A jet of fire shot outward, catching the fringe of Isolde's sleeve. Agatha, seeing this, rushed to smother it, but the fire leapt from sister to sister, faster than thought. The dry herbs hung from the rafters ignited, and flames raced along the beams like hunting dogs on a scent. Eliza screamed and fled, the wind tearing at her skirts. Behind her, the Candle sisters burned, but they did not try to escape. Witnesses later swore they were seen standing in the window, hand in hand, heads bowed together, as if resigned, or welcoming, the flames. By dawn, only blackened timbers remained, and among the ashes, 2 skeletons fused together at the hands. The wax heart was never found. Part 4. The Ashes Speak. The ruin on Widerschen Lane soon became a place of hushed pilgrimage. Folk claimed the sisters' spirits lingered, and that wishes whispered into candle flames might yet be granted, for a price. Children dared each other to sneak in at night. Some returned pale and silent, refusing to speak of what they'd seen. Others boasted of voices whispering in the dark, of twin shapes flickering in the burned hall. As the years turned, the legend grew. New settlers to Greymire heard of the Candle sisters and scoffed, until illness, misfortune, or madness visited those who mocked the dead. One winter, a traveling preacher tried to exorcise the ruin. He planted a great iron cross in the cindered hearth and prayed aloud. At dawn, the cross had melted like tallow, its shape warped and grotesque. The preacher fled, and the ruin was left to rot. Local midwives, secretly, still visited the ruin to pray for safe births. Lovers left offerings, lockets, scraps of lace, melted candles shaped like hearts. Some claimed their prayers were answered, others claimed to hear voices from the ash, warning them away. And always, the warning passed from mother to child in Greymire. The Candle sisters burned together, and together, they still burn. Part 5. Secrets in Wax. Decades later, in 1892, a young scholar named Thomas Gray came to Greymire. He had read of the Candle sisters in a crumbling folktale collection and was determined to learn the truth. Gray took lodging in the decaying inn, ignoring the landlord's wary glance when he spoke of the ruin. By lamplight, he pored over parish records, discovering fragments, Marguerite Candle's name noted beside births, deaths, and stillbirths, the sisters' own baptismal records, their handwriting scrawled in the church ledger when they donated candles each All Hallows' Eve. Gray learned of Elijah Fallow, the youth left mindless by the marsh. He visited the poor man, now an old husk rocking in a chair, and asked what had happened. Elijah only stared with empty eyes and whispered, barely audible, "Fire takes, fire gives." At last, Gray dared the ruin itself. He went at dusk, lantern in hand, boots sinking into the black marsh mud. The ruin felt alive, ash clung to the walls like mold, and shapes seemed to shift at the corner of his vision. In the hearth where the sisters had burned, he found blackened lumps, wax, melted and hardened again by rain and cold. Gray picked one up. It was a half-formed heart, runes faint but visible. As he turned it over, his lantern guttered. In the sudden darkness, he heard breathing, soft, close, like 2 voices exhaling together. The lantern flared back to life, and Gray fled, heart pounding. He kept the wax heart. In his lodgings, by candlelight, he studied it obsessively. The runes made no sense, until he saw them in a mirror. Reversed, they spelled a word in an ancient tongue, bind. Gray realized, too late, what it meant. That night, his room caught fire. Neighbors found him dead, clutching the wax heart, its wick burned down to nothing. Some swore they saw twin shadows in the flames, hand in hand, heads bowed together. Part 6. The Last Flame. Even into the modern day, the ruin endures. Roofless, walls half collapsed, yet somehow never fully reclaimed by vine or moss. Candles still appear there, as if left by unseen hands. Red ones, black ones, some shaped like hearts, some like skulls. On certain nights, pale figures flicker in the corner of the eye, twin women, hair like flowing wax, eyes catching firelight. Locals say the Candle sisters' gift, and curse, remains. A wish made in the ruin, spoken into a burning taper, may yet be granted. But the price is always hidden, waiting. Those who mock the legend sometimes vanish, or return changed, a face scarred by inexplicable burns, a mind lost in smoke. And so the warning endures, passed from mouth to mouth, generation to generation. Greater than, they burned together, and together, they still burn. Fire remembers its own. Epilogue. In the flame. If you ever find yourself in Greymire, and the fog hangs low over the marsh, you might see it, the ruin on Widdersham Lane. You might be tempted, candle in hand, to step into the burned hall and whisper your heart's darkest wish. If you do, watch the flame closely. If it flickers and dances, if you hear a faint, shared breath in the dark, know this. The Candle Sisters have heard you. And fire never forgets. If you'd like, I can expand even further into diary fragments, letters, old trial records, or a second tale of modern-day descendants haunted by the sisters' curse. Would you like that?